For this first assignment, we're going to do two parts basically. One is to capture a fast shutter speed of something moving to freeze it, and then a similar thing or the same thing with a slow shutter speed in order to blur the motion. So to start, you'd want to set your camera to shutter priority so you can plug in the shutter and not have to worry about the aperture. And we're going to use a fairly slow shutter speed. I would recommend a 15th or an 1/8 of a second. And then on the other end of the spectrum, about a 1/25th or 250th of a second, whatever is needed in order to show blur and show that it's frozen. And here are some examples. This is definitely not the best composition and really not the best sort of subject. I'd find something more like cars or people walking or riding bikes or like the L train or something like that that's going to be consistently moving in order to get a consistent picture of either the same thing or two different things that are moving at about the same speed. And I'd recommend that the direction of movement be perpendicular to the camera because that's going to show the movement the most. So here are just a little faster and a little faster pictures to freeze motion to give you an idea of what we're looking for. And we're really just looking to get the extremes, one end and the other. Keep in mind for the slow shutter speed, you should be stabilizing the camera, ideally using a tripod in order to hold the camera still and get something sharp like your background while your subject is actually moving. Here are some student examples of a fast and slow shutter speed. Fast, slow, fast, slow, slow, fast, fast, slow, slow because the pillow is actually moving, fast because it's frozen midair, hand moving, so this is fast and it's frozen, and then this one is it moving, although we want to make sure that our focus remains at the same point because you can clearly see the focus change between the two of these. Fast shutter speed, slow, slow, and fast, fast and slow. I think that's fast and slow, yep. Slow and, no, that's fast and that's slow, although we'd want it to be more frozen than this, ideally. Yeah, fast. I'm going to say fast and, sorry, slow shutter speed, fast shutter speed. I believe, well, I'll just flip through them, but that one's kind of not as sharp as it could be, but I think that's supposed to be the fast one, and then that is the slower one because it has more blur. So the second part of the project is controlling our depth of field. Now with a digital SLR, we're going to do that by changing the aperture, but if we have a smartphone, we need to do something other than the aperture to control that. So it's going to be changing your camera subject distance and changing your focal length, your lens. So with aperture priority on a digital SLR, it's really easy. We're going to just kind of do the extremes. Usually that's about a 5.6 versus a 22. You want to get relatively close to whatever you're photographing, and that will create the most change in the background. With a smartphone, that's going to be relatively the same idea. If we have a macro mode available, we'd want to get close to our subject, turn on the macro mode, and that will give us a shallow depth of field. Also, zooming in or using a narrower angle view or zoom, or like 2x, 3x zoom, will give us a more noticeable shallow depth of field. Whereas using a wide angle and backing off a bit is going to give us more depth of field. So here's some examples of a small aperture, which means it's a large number, so less depth of field, and then stepping to a mid aperture range and then an aperture that is Really large, meaning small number, gives us a lot of blur in the background, so a shallow depth of field. And we're just looking to get pictures of the same subject where we're getting essentially that change at either end of the spectrum. So with a digital SLR, just changing the aperture should do that, but we'd still want to be relatively close to our subject and zoomed in. With a smartphone, we may have to actually change the position of the camera a bit and change the zoom a bit, so the compositions might look a bit different, but try and be the same subject. And then here are some student examples of a large depth of field, small depth of field, small depth of field. Oh, I guess that's a large depth of field and that's a small depth of field. But when they're slightly out of focus, it's hard to kind of tell. So this one's the large depth of field. This is the smaller depth of field. I'm going to say that that's the shallow depth of field, and that's the large depth of field, large depth of field, shallower depth of field. This is the large depth of field, that's the smaller depth of field. Large depth of field, smaller depth of field. We'd want to try and keep our angle more consistent if we can, because this is quite a change, but it does make the effect very obvious. Large depth of field, small depth of field, and that is the end.